Good morning, everyone. Today is Wednesday, August the 23rd, 2023. I'm Donna Will, Professional Development Coordinator for the Central Maryland Regional Office of the Maryland Department of Health's Developmental Disabilities Administration. We welcome you to the Strengthening Self-Directed Services Timeline webinar. And on the panel today, we have Bernie Simons, Deputy Secretary for the DDA. We have Christy Colbreth. She is the statewide coordinator of self-directed services, and Nick Burton, director of programs. Before we begin, I'd like to go over a few things about the webinar. All participants are in listen-only mode. There are two options to hear the webinar, by computer and by phone. And if you look at the panel on your right labeled audio, you can click either computer or phone to switch for the best option. We will be recording the webinar and posting the session on YouTube and the DDA website. Today's PowerPoint has been uploaded as an attachment and is available for you to download in the webinar panel box. Questions can be typed in the question or chat box in the webinar panel, and we're going to get to those towards the end of the presentation. So now I'd like to introduce Deputy Secretary Bernie Simons. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you, Donna. And before we begin today's webinar, I want to thank everybody who's attending. I want to acknowledge the strain on you, your families, employees, vendors, due to the processes of non-payments. And I assure you the DDA is working hard to make sure that there are resolutions to these issues through close collaboration with the fiscal management and counseling agencies. So during today's webinar, you're going to learn about our new rapid response self-directed services team that is dedicated to working directly with you to resolve non-payment concerns. Our rapid response team has only been operational for 4 business days and has already made an impact. Approximately 80 individuals have reached out directly to our rapid response email address. Each of these inquiries has been assigned to a team member, and so far we have resolved payment issues for over 20 participants. Please note that among these 20 participants, there were multiple non-payment issues, not just one, multiple, for different employees and vendors that provide supports to them. So today you're going to hear about 4 immediate solutions that our rapid response team is working on and implementing within the next week. These solutions will impact a large number of non-payment issues quickly, so we're also able to reduce the risk of them recurring again. The DDA is totally committed to get ahead of this and make sure that self-directed services in Maryland is strong, flexible, and sustainable. And you know that we have had a commitment to self-directed services for many years now. It's on our website. It's one of our focus areas. And with that, I just want to reassure you that we will continue to work with this to get this resolved. With that, I'm going to turn this over to Nick Burton, who's the director of our programs, who will help coordinate resolutions to these matters. Thank you.
Thanks, Bernie. Good morning, everybody. I really quickly want to kind of go over the agenda and just a couple housekeeping things before we get started with the presentation. So housekeeping wise, I want to hear from all of you. And during our question and answer session, I'm really looking for feedback on our plan. I'm looking for any ideas that you have, any questions you have about the plan, the timeline, the rapid response team. I do want to share that individual payment issues won't be addressed in this webinar. Those are being addressed by the rapid response team, and we have an email address that you can send those individual issues to. And likely many of you have heard from one of the rapid response team members, including myself, who is also assigned payment issues to help resolve. And I know yesterday I had the pleasure of working with about 4 or 5 of you to get some resolution on some matters. So As Bernie said, we are 100% committed to getting these issues taken care of with you. And that's what I want to do today, to tell you how. I want you to see what we're doing. I want us to be transparent about the work that we're doing and share with you how we are going to ensure employees and vendors are paid for the work that they're providing. So real quick, just to go over the agenda, we did have just a welcome with Bernie. I am going to go over our timeline. Last week, we sent out a communication to everyone with a timeline that identifies some things that we're doing right now and the things that we're going to be doing next to eventually get to a stronger, flexible, resilient, self-directed system within Maryland. And bottom line, that includes making sure that people are getting paid. I'm also going to share some data that we're using to make decisions and help resolve some of the issues related to non-payment. I am going to talk, or Christy actually, is going to talk to you a little bit more about the actual response team. So when you send an email into our rapid response team email box, what happens to it? Where does it go? What happens then? And who's going to reach out? And when do they reach out? She's going to share some more information about that. She's going to turn it back over to me, and I'm going to talk about a few initial barriers that we have identified, as well as some potential solutions to those barriers and the actions that we're going to take within hopefully the next week to move forward on eliminating those barriers immediately, but also for the long term. We're also then going to talk about training. You know, this response to this issue is not just to today make sure people get paid, but then continue on. It's to make sure people get paid, help facilitate resolution to those issues with the FMCS, but also make sure that we're putting in an infrastructure and doing the training that we need to do after talking with many of you, talking with your case managers, support brokers, family members, making sure that the right training is getting into place so that we can continue to build on what we've created here in Maryland in regards to self-directed services. And then we're going to talk a little bit about next steps. As we communicated last week, this plan and this timeline of how we're going to work to resolve these issues doesn't happen overnight. And it's a collective process. And there's a lot of different things that have to happen in order to keep moving forward. So I want to share a little bit about those things. So Donna, why don't we go to the next slide and where we can look at the timeline specifically. So this is the timeline that we sent out for folks. We sent this out last week, and I'm going to go over this timeline in a little bit more detail here. So right now, what the DDA is doing, essentially now, between now and the next 60 days, we are going to create, we actually already created, a DDA SDS support team, the rapid response team, to help with payment issues. This team, and Christy's going to talk a little bit more about the actual team, but just to give you an understanding of the work the team is doing, this team meets every morning. Every single morning they huddle and they get assignments for the day to be able to triage and resolve. And then they come back at the end of the day and document progress made on resolution. And myself and Christy review that on a daily basis. I think Christy probably gets annoyed with me when I ask her how many got resolved today, because it's important to me that if we are going to assign resolution to a DDA team member, that you are hearing from them and that there's action being taken. And I just will reiterate what Bernie said. If you've submitted an email, it has been assigned and triage is actively happening right now. And I would venture to say most of you have probably heard from a DDA rapid response team member if you've submitted a email to that inbox. If you've submitted an email to myself or others, we are forwarding them to that email box, but I would encourage you to use the DDA rapid response email box to be able to ensure that your concern regarding a payment issue gets triaged quickly. This rapid response team will be in place as we continue to move forward on the timeline, and these payment issues, we're able to help facilitate resolution with the FMCS. The other issue that the other thing that DDA is doing right now is a strong focus on all of our self-directed person-centered plans to make sure they are approved by the annual plan date. Daily, I am getting a report of self-directed PCPs that are due the next day, the following day, essentially within the next week. If those have not been turned in yet and are coming due, I am looping in the regional director, the SDS lead, the CCS director, executive director if need be, the CCS, to make sure the plan gets completed, turned in, reviewed, and approved on time to make sure that there's no auto extension of a self-directed PCP. We want to make sure that that PCP gets done, the budget gets completed, budget submitted to the FMCS to make sure that you can have codes created and that you have access to your new budget. We do not want to delay that. If you are running into issues around your PCP, certainly let us know. We will reach out and work closely with the regional office to make sure that that is getting taken care of immediately. If you have your CCS reaching out to you to update something, fix something, coordinate something in your plan, please respond to them as quickly as possible. We want to make sure that your plan being approved is not the barrier to any payment issues for employees or vendors. So please make sure that you work closely with your team to get that approved. And I will be working really closely with our regional offices and CCS to make sure that that process is happening. Like I mentioned, we are working on putting some training into place. We had a good conversation with the CCS leadership recently about training that CCS really feel they need to be able to best support people who are self-directing their services. One of those training needs was in regards to how to help facilitate, coordinate, and monitor a person who self-directs their plan. There are a lot of team members, there are a lot of players. You've got support brokers, you've got families, you've got providers, you've got vendors, you've got employees, you've got potentially day-to-day administrators really helping with a lot of that. And we want to make sure that they have the training on how to best support you self-direct your your plan and your services. Additionally, we want to make sure that we provide some training with employers so that you, as an employer, which is a big responsibility, fully understand what that role and what that responsibility is when it comes to assigning work, when it comes to supervising and monitoring that work being completed, when it comes to reviewing and signing timesheets, making sure that employees are working the schedules that they are required to work, and then also on a basic level, really understanding the labor laws that exist around being an employer, but also what your FMCS's responsibility is in supporting you in your employer responsibilities. That is a collaborative role, but there's some really good training that we want to be able to share with everybody on what that looks like. So we're going to be working on building that, and we'll talk a little bit more about training here in a moment. The other thing that we are implementing right away is there's a lot going on in self-direction right now. There's a lot of information. There's a lot of new things that are in place due to the SDS Act, due to new policies. And we want to make sure that everybody is being kept up to date and getting the same information at the same time, whether that's your CCS, your support broker, your day-to-day administrator, you, whoever is supporting you, self-directing your service. We want to start having monthly self-directed service meetings for everybody that's in the self-directed community, so that we can all be on the same page about what is and what isn't happening within self-direction. It will also be a good time for us to be giving you progress updates on where we're at in relation to the data I was telling you where we were collecting and ultimate resolution on payment issues. So those are things we're doing right now. There's more to do, right? So the next thing that we're really going to be focusing on, once we can get some stability around the payment issues, some training up and running and in place, making sure that PCPs are getting approved by the annual plan date, we are going to then take a big, huge, deep dive into our policies and procedures related to self-direction. I'm going to give you an example of what that might look like. So yesterday, I was looking at our respite policy after it was brought to my attention that our respite policy may not be meeting some of the needs of some of the people that we support. And what our respite policy said was that if you are living with the person and providing respite services, you can't provide any other service. And that doesn't make sense, right? Think about you are living at home with your mom, your dad, your parents, and your sibling comes home from college every summer. And during the summer, your sibling provides you with respite support. So your mom and dad can get a break, go on a vacation potentially. But your sibling during the summer, when they're not providing respite, may also sometimes provide you personal supports on the weekend or in the evening to meet a need that you have in your plan. And we removed the barrier from that policy that said previously that they couldn't do that. So now, if you have somebody who provides you respite services that isn't your primary caregiver, can't be the respite provider, but if you have someone living with you and they provide you respite occasionally, they can also provide you another service. So that was a recent policy change. Those are the kind of things that we're going to be looking at in our policies and procedures to make sure that what we have makes sense and that it's meeting the need. We also want to make sure that it's in plain language and that where we can create visual depictions of the process, we want to be able to do that. We understand you're busy, you've got a lot going on, your employers, you have a life, and that reading a 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 page document isn't always going to work for you. And that when we can put something visually for you, that would be really helpful, we believe, to further understanding our policies and procedures. And that's kind of the next thing that I put here on the timeline is that we want to be able to create visual guides, but we also want to work closely with the FMCS. You know, we want to, for example, with FMCS, if you have a vendor who submits an invoice and there's some information missing on the invoice, instead of getting an email outlining in bulleted form what's missing, it might be also helpful to receive a visual of this is what a good invoice looks like, this is what an invoice looks like that can't be processed, and highlighting the differences so that it's quick, it's easy, you can visually see what has to happen, get taken care of, and then get that submitted back in. Additionally, with the onboarding process, what does the onboarding process look like from a visual? What's step 1? What's step 2? What's step 3? How long do the steps take? What does each step include? I know that it can be frustrating to wonder how long it's going to take to get an employee onboarded. I understand it can be frustrating to believe you have your employee onboarded, then you submit something to be paid, and it can't get paid because there's a form missing. We want to make sure that upfront, you know, as an employer, exactly what's required, when it's required, and how long it's going to take to process. And we want to work closely with the FMCS to be able to help create those visuals as well. The other issue or the other thing that we're going to be doing is, and we mentioned this in our communication last week, is we want to be able to host some listening sessions in all 4 of the regions. We want to hear directly from you what's going on, what we need to be doing, what we need to be thinking about from a policy perspective, from a data perspective, from a visual guides perspective, from any perspective. We want to hear from you. These are your services. You are our customer. We want to make sure that we're meeting your needs. We want to definitely make sure that we get a good handle on these payment issues, and then we will be scheduling those listening tours and sessions in all 4 of the regions. We'll also be cognizant of the fact that people work and that may not be able to attend between 9 and 5, and that there may need to be some evening sessions as well to accommodate for that. So this is just the beginning of our timeline, right? We understand that we may get some new information after the listening session, and we may need to add additional benchmarks to our timeline. But the overall goal of DDA having a timeline is something that you can see and see what we're doing, but then also know that our goal is what I think your goal is, right? To have a strong, flexible, sustainable, self-directed services in Maryland. And I think the key word is strong and flexible and sustainable. Those are things we all want. We want this to be around for a long time. We want it to be really strong, but we also want to make sure that it's flexible so that you can meet your day-to-day needs. That's the beauty of self-direction, and that's the hallmark of it. That's what you want, and we want to help make sure that we can provide that. So Donna, why don't we go to the next slide? I'm going to talk a little bit about data. So I had mentioned I was going to share a little bit of the data with you. We are working really closely to get a good sense of who hasn't been paid, why they haven't been paid, but also who's only been partially paid and the reason. We are working very closely with the FMCS and starting to really put into a good report and a good process to be able to view that data on a day-to-day basis, week to week, after every payroll, and get a good sense of what exists, what needs to be done. Are there any buckets of issues? So if there's a barrier that's preventing payment for multiple people, what is that? And can we do something more system-wide to fix that issue? So we are going to be using that data to make those decisions. As I mentioned, my hope is that as we start having our monthly meetings, I'm able to show you all the percentage of change from employees and vendors who haven't been paid to employees that have also been paid. We want to be able to accurately depict that. And please understand that in the partially paid, that also accounts for payment errors. So if there was an error in payment, it is accounting for that because we really view that as a partial payment if it was an error. So we'll be monitoring that as well. And the big thing for us is obviously to see this number go down, to be able to see that from week to week, the number of no pay and partially pay goes down to a place where we get to where people, if they have a timesheet or an invoice and it's submitted, it's getting paid. And if it's not getting paid, there is a very valid and specific reason that has been communicated with you in time so that you can work to resolve that issue. So that is what we're working towards. Really quick now, I want to move to the response team and give Christy a little bit of time to share with you a bit about what the response team kind of does and what it looks like for the response team on a day-to-day basis. So Donna, can we go to the next slide and then turn it over to Christy?
Thanks, Nick. So happy to be with you all today to talk about the team that we have that is responding to your emails and your concerns and some data that we're getting from the SDSs. So I'd first like to acknowledge that if you have not heard from someone at the DDA and you've emailed the SDS email, we are working really quickly to get through those. I apologize. We are assigning them quickly, but we could be quicker. So we will be continuing to do that in the next few days. So I wanted to give sort of an overview of the what happens when you send an email or what happens when we get information from the SDS. So first, if you send us a complaint to our SDS email, that gets looked at by me and it gets put into a log that we are tracking, both to make sure that we're addressing everything, but also to maintain data to make sure that we create systemic solutions to all the problems that we see. So it gets logged, and then I assign it to someone in our team, and then that person in the team then does a review of what has happened. So they review the emails that have been sent, and they review any information on the SDS portals. They might talk to you and try to figure out what has happened. When a solution is, or when the situation has been determined, when we figure out what has happened, we will facilitate a solution with the team and the SDS, and then, of course, document that resolution so that we can make some systemic change. So I'll give you an example of how that might work. We've received several concerns regarding not having funding in a line item, and so there being non-payment. We have, I think, a more systemic solution to this, but for right now, our response team has been connecting with people to help make sure that budget modifications are completed and processed quickly. You can't hear me very well. I'm getting that. Nick, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I think if you are speaking close to the microphone and you kind of keep
I've had some audio issues. Is this better?
Yes, that's better.
Okay, great. I apologize. I've had audio issues all morning. Great. So we are documenting those resolutions to make sure that we're making some specific change. All right. We're also receiving data from the FMCSs on non-payment. So we get some information regarding especially vendor invoices that have not been paid. So our response team is taking that information, and I'm assigning our response team members to a specific vendor. And they're going to go to that vendor and check to make sure that all of the invoices that they have outstanding are accounted for. They might review an invoice with the vendor to make sure it has all the details needed in order to be paid. And we'll be working with our direct contacts at the FMCS to resolve those payments quickly, especially if an invoice needs some work. So if you have questions or feedback, please email dda.sds@maryland.gov. I saw some comments asking for us to have a autoresponder. I'm happy to do that if you feel like that's useful. We don't have one right now, but we will make sure that that's available so that you see that it has been received. Take it back over to Nick.
Thanks, Christy. I appreciate it. Why don't we go to slide 6? I want to talk about some initial solutions that we've identified. And please know that these are initial and that there are many more solutions to be, barriers and solutions to be identified. And in fact, as I'm looking at the comments, there have been many support brokers that have identified not being able to see the budget is a barrier. Absolutely. There are multiple barriers to the non-payment issue. And, we are committed to looking at each one of those and working closely with folks to find a solution and then taking action on those solutions. I wanted to share with you the initial barriers that we identified based on the issues that have been coming into us. And I want to let you know kind of what solutions we're working on regarding that. So vendor invoices. So certainly we understand that there is multiple vendors that have not received payment or have only received partial payment. We have over the last week been able to collect data on every single one of those. We have bucketed them by vendor and also the amount that is owed to the vendor, as well as how long the invoice has been outstanding. Each vendor has been assigned to a rapid response team member as of this morning to start following up with the vendor on all of the invoices that haven't been paid, and to work with you for the reason to get those taken care of and submitted, so that this isn't a piecemeal project, that all of your invoices can get taken care of at once and resolved to ensure that future issues do not occur. The other issue that we are building a solution on right now and hope to be able to communicate directions on how we're doing this over the next week is regarding 2-to-1 overlap. We are pulling data on those people in self-direction who have 2-to-1 identified in their plan, and we will be confirming that at the regional level, and then we will be forwarding a spreadsheet to the FMCSs for everybody that has 2-to-1 overlap or 2-to-1 authorized, the amount of 2-to-1 that's authorized, so that that can be documented on the FMCS side. There can be the necessary codes to make sure that that can be billed for, and that there are no concerns when two staff are working together to provide a service. I do, based upon need and approval by the DDA. Please note that 2-to-1 is very specific to a person needing 2 staff to support them with a task, activity, because of the medical support needs, behavioral support needs, and that needs to be clearly documented in the plan and approved by the regional office. Now, let's say you have somebody receiving personal supports from a staff member. They cannot also be receiving community development services at the same time. That is an overlap, and it won't be approved. It's not approved. You have to be able to receive the one service at the time. That doesn't mean the person can't receive community development services. It just means that someone can't be from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. providing personal supports and somebody else providing community development services. It means that if there's someone who has 2-to-1 supports, they're providing 2-to-1 personal supports or 2-to-1 community development services. If someone doesn't have 2-to-1 authorized, 2 people can't be working at the same time to support the person. If that is, there would need to be justification for that. Is it training? Is it PTO? Was it a error? Was there an emergent situation? The FMCS would need to find out the reason for those. If it's training, if it's PTO, that needs to be clearly identified on your budget, and make sure that it's clearly identified on the timesheet for code so that it doesn't get held up. But the big reason is when there's 2 staff working, making sure that that's clearly identified in the plan. So we're going to work to make sure that that happens. The FMCS has a list of those people so that they can ensure that when that overlap pops up, that they can verify that, yes, this person has 2-to-1 authorized in their plan and can receive that service. So the other issue is that from time to time, there are 0 funds in a budget line item. You may have personal supports authorized, and you may have community development services authorized. And for some reason, you've been really accessing a lot of your personal supports, and you've zeroed out that budget line item. And when you approve a timesheet and you submit it for someone who provided you personal supports, there's no money in the budget line item. What needs to happen then is a budget modification. We are working closely with FMCS and internally to determine how we can give you and your FMCS a little bit more flexibility in this area to be able to ensure that budget line items at the time of payroll can easily be corrected to make sure that people can be paid. And we're hoping to have a solid plan on that within the next week and to be able to communicate that to everybody so you're aware of what that looks like. The other one that I mentioned earlier was the respite issue. Yesterday, I got 3 emails about somebody being denied payment because they were providing respite to the person, they lived with the person, but they also provided maybe personal supports on another day. Again, we want to make sure that that barrier has been removed. It got removed from our policy. We're going to be communicating that in our Friday webinar that with the Deputy Secretary, that barrier has been removed. So FMCSs will also be getting a memo today notifying them that that barrier in the policy has also been removed. Again, these are just initial solutions. There are multiple barriers, multiple solutions, and multiple actions being taken. We had to start somewhere. This is where we started based upon the emails that we have been receiving from all of you. It does not mean that there are not other important areas to find solutions on. This just means this is where we started. Again, this is a timeline. This is it's going to take time to put into place all of the structures that we all want in place to make sure that this is a strong system. The initial part of this timeline and our work together is quickly identifying barriers and solutions to non-payment issues so that those can get taken care of. These issues right here, finding a solution to them and implementing that solution is going to resolve a lot of payment issues. And you'll be able to see a significant decrease in those when these get implemented. As I said, we're hoping to implement these within the next week or so. Donna, can you go to the next slide, please? We are going to quickly talk about training. And the slide might take a minute to catch up, but we are going to be working with applied self-direction on identifying some training supports for people. Donna, can you go to slide 7, please? Maybe we're having technical difficulty, but I will just explain what's on. There we go. Perfect. So as I mentioned earlier, we want to make sure that we have training available for CCS, employers, family, and staff. We understand that there's a lot of information to train on. We understand that there are probably a lot of things you want your CCS to know, or you want your employees or your vendors to know. There's some things that we want to make sure we've done our due diligence in regards of informing you of the rights, roles, responsibilities of being an employer. We want to make sure that your family is staff, because many of you rely on family as staff. Where that role what that role looks like when they're being paid to provide a service versus when they're being your family member, and where the difference lies, and what it needs to look like, and the requirements there. Applied self-direction is well respected within the field of self-direction, and we want to work really closely with them and you to put good training together, so that as we are working on payment issues, we're also putting into place a structure that makes sure that we're rooted in a firm foundation of knowledge, right, of self-direction and how to implement self-direction from all parts of our system, whether it be case managers, employers, family of staff, FMCSs, across the board. Training is going to be critical in our long-term sustainability efforts. All right, I want to talk about next steps. So if we can go to slide 8. So as I've mentioned, and I'll continue to mention, we have additional solutions to implement. I'm seeing many great solutions in the comments, and we're going to go certainly over the comments here soon, and I will respond to as many as I possibly can in the time remaining, and share my thoughts on some of what has been shared. But please know that the solutions page that I discussed with you on slide 6 are the initial solutions. There are more to come. We will be communicating what those solutions are. We will be transparent about what those solutions are. We may also need to pick your brain on implementing those solutions. So that will be coming. We're also, again, like I said, working closely with Applied Self-Direction on putting together training. We, again, will need your feedback. We're going to need your ideas, your suggestions, to make sure that the training makes sense, we're getting it right, it includes the information that it needs to include, so that when we implement it, we're not having to make a bunch of revisions. And then again, like I said, my hope is that over the next month, we're able to really make a big impact on the non-payment issues, and then we can start scheduling some listening sessions to really get feedback from all of you and the self-directed community in general on where things are at, how things are going, what we need to hear, what we need to do differently, and really getting your feedback to make sure, again, that we go back to a strong, flexible, sustainable, self-directed system. So with that, I'm going to go over some of the comments and questions that we have in the chat box. We have about 15 minutes, so I will answer some, or Christy might answer some, depending on kind of what that looks like. We will kind of tag team here a little bit. So one of the questions was about the bill system. And Christy, I'm familiar with the bill system, but I don't know that I know enough information to be able to provide any sort of an update on it and potential fees or emails that people are getting. I think that's something we may need to bring up with the FMCS this Friday, unless you have any thoughts or input on the bill system.
I do think this means bill.com, which is the payment system that the ARC uses. And so we can definitely make sure that the ARC is getting really clear information about where those, like who is sending those emails, and how to make sure they don't end up in spam you're getting.
Great. So there were some questions about the bill system and the emails that they're receiving and seeing some quote unquote fees. We will certainly bring that to the ARC's attention, and we will ask the ARC to address that. And if we can help communicate anything from the ARC regarding the bill.com system, we will definitely and certainly do that for folks. Okay, this is an easy one. I can answer this one. Where can I download the PowerPoint? Donna, where is the PowerPoint going to go, and how will people access it after this meeting?
The PowerPoint is in the handout section of this platform under handout. And if you don't see it, there's a thing at the top where you can view it through the file. But if you can't find it, you can email me at donna.will@maryland.gov, and I will send you the PowerPoint.
And then also, folks, this will go on our self-directed website, our webpage, as well as be on YouTube. So there'll be many ways to access this. And then, of course, you can email Donna for the PowerPoint. You can also message me or Christy. We can get you access to the PowerPoint. Okay. Okay. Please put the email address in the chat box for the rapid response team. Christy, can you go ahead and do that for us?
I sure can. I've been responding to people with it, but I'll do that too.
Oh, perfect. Okay, good. So there was one person who wrote in, and there might be others who said, you know, I sent something to the rapid response team. I didn't get any sort of an automatic notification. We'll fix that. We'll make sure you get an automatic notification. And please note that truly they are being triaged. I see them every day being triaged. Our team is very much dedicated to getting back to you, and absolutely will. If you are concerned, you can certainly email me. My email is Nicholas, Nicholas, .Burton, B as in boy, U-R-T as in Tom, O-N, at maryland.gov. But please give them some time to respond to you. They may have reached out to the FMCS. They may have reached out to a vendor, an employee, just to get some more information, and certainly have all intention of reaching out to you to make sure that we can get those issues addressed. So I appreciate it. What happens when we're not getting any results and people just pass the buck? Well, you know, the buck stops with us, right? So if you are not getting results, you're not getting action taken, certainly you can email me. I would encourage you to email the SDS response team to get to have that be triaged and a person to respond to you. We are also we meet weekly with the FMCSs to address issues, but we also will be having very specific targeted meetings with the FMCS point people on issues related to non-payment to seek fast resolution. So for example, this afternoon at 1, I'm meeting with a point person from GT on 10 that have been assigned to me to seek resolution. So that's kind of an example of what that's going to look like. So if you got assigned to me and I'm working with GT, you'll either hear from myself or GT that those issues are being resolved or have been resolved. Similar to how some of you might have experienced that yesterday with some that were resolved by the response team members yesterday. You were notified via email, and I was CC'd on some of those emails. So access to budgets. So I know there's been a lot of conversation around support brokers and others having access to the PCP and LTSS and access to quote unquote the budgets, and CCSs being able to share the budgets. I just want to pause for a second and say that, you know, we are working with our LTSS partners in general to make sure providers in general are getting access to LTSS. This is not just a self-direction thing. Right now, our traditional providers do not see all aspects of the PCP in LTSS. We're working on making sure that that's accessible. We're also working through the My LTSS rollout to make sure that people who are self-directing or people in general have access to their plans to be able to share with potential people on their team. I think the other thing too is, for CCS, if you're on a team and the person agrees, CCS can give you a copy of those documents and you can request that. In CCS, if the person wants a team member to have that information, please put that together for them and give that to them. Again, we want to make sure that people have control of what is given to other people, and that if a person wants you to have that information, they're able to give it to you. I would say from a budget perspective, I saw some emails yesterday where it looked like there were some budgets that were submitted. They were submitted incorrectly. I'm not sure if the team got to look at the budget, but I would say if you're submitting a budget, the team should make sure that they feel that budget is reflective of the plan and reflective of the person's needs, wants. Again, that person who's self-directing their supports gets to make the determination as who weighs in on that and who sees it. But I would say that if you have a support broker and a CCS, which you all have a CCS, you want your support broker to help be a part of that conversation to make sure that your budget, when it's submitted, reflects what it needs to be able to reflect. We are working, talking about solutions, barrier solutions, actions. We are working with folks on putting together kind of a one-pager reminders, FYIs for CCS related to self-directed plans, particularly in regards to navigating the roles, the budgets, making sure that certain things are in place before a budget gets submitted. We are going to be working on that and releasing that to our CCS in the near future so that that information is in the palm of their hands. Okay, let's see. There was a comment here that it would be, what is the DDA doing to make sure FMCS have consistent policies? So, as we're looking at our policies, we are going to have to do that hand in hand with the FMCS, right? The FMCS are contracted with the DDA. We certainly will need to look at their policies to make sure that they're in alignment with ours. But also, I think, as we've talked, they need to make sense and they need to be accessible by people. And so we will be working closely with them and with all of you as we are looking at policies and procedures in general to make sure that they're accessible, understandable, and frankly, usable. When will have CCS have access to the FMCS portals to monitor the budgets? So that is something I will bring to the FMCS meeting this week. I don't want to speak out of turn on that one. Christy, is there anything you wanted to add to that? I think it's something we are continually having a conversation with our FMCS partners. Is that correct?
That is true. I think it's something that we can escalate. I will say this is not the solution that will work for everyone, and it is not a long-term solution for any team with a support broker that is active. But if the participant has access to their portal, they can go in themselves or with you, I think sitting right by each other, right side by side, and download those statements and review them together. Or the person can request from the FMCS to have the FMCS send the support broker a statement on whatever frequency they want. Now, I know that that's not the solution, and it's not the solution for everyone, and it's not going to resolve all the needs of having access, but it is something that is available
now. For point of clarification, it looks like someone thought maybe I said we were getting rid of auto extend. We're not. Auto extend is still going to be in place. We don't want any plan at DDA to go into auto extend. Even though we have auto extend in place, we don't want that. We want a plan to be done, finished, and uploaded by the APD date. That's the goal. It doesn't mean that auto extend is going away. We will still have auto extend in place, but our goal is to make sure that the region CCS are working closely with all of you to make sure that that plan gets approved by the APD date. It is a hassle for every single person involved when a plan goes into auto extend. We don't want it. I don't want it in our self-directed services, and I don't want it in our traditional services. We are not getting rid of auto extend. Still be in place. Okay. There was concern that people cannot wait to get payment. We agree. We are working as fast as possible to get these taken care of with the FMCS. It is the rapid response team's full-time job. It doesn't mean that this is going to take 90 days to make sure people get paid. People are being actively paid every time these issues get resolved. The FMCS are resolving issues. The rapid response team is helping resolve issues. People, as Bernie said, multiple people just in the last 4 days had timesheet vendor issues resolved and are being paid. So what I'm trying to communicate is that this plan in general, for it to be right, for it to be done correctly, and for it to be sustainable, it is going to take time for us. But what we're working on immediately is making sure that people are getting paid. All right, let's see here. We have a couple more minutes. I'm going to skip down to some of the more recent questions that people have submitted. So for one of the questions was, is there a number of minutes for overlap between staff when shift changes? Yeah. If there's a 7-minute overlap, there isn't really a problem. If there is more than a 7-minute overlap, there needs to be clear understanding as to why. Was there an emergent issue? Was there a health issue? Was there a safety issue, a behavioral support need? Like what happened? And then there needs to be a good conversation with FMCS. If it was PTO or training, that definitely has got to be documented so that the FMCS know and can make sure that it gets processed for payment. Let's see, what else? Let me see, one more question. Let's see here. Seeing a lot of recommendations. So what we're going to do is take a look at the questions that have been submitted. We will answer them in an FAQ. For recommendations, we will definitely take those recommendations. I will summarize the recommendations and share them at the first monthly SDS meeting that we hopefully have next month, so that you're aware of the recommendations that everyone made on this call today. And then I will let you know what other solutions we're kind of looking at based on those recommendations. In regards to specific issues that were pulled up and addressed in this, we will triage them to the rapid response team so that they can follow up with you to address them. But as always, we will respond and have a response to all of the questions that were submitted. I do want to say I really appreciate you getting on here. I know this is difficult. I know this is frustrating. I get it. And I want you to know we are working as hard as we possibly can to get some relief into place. And I know it's not fast enough, but I promise you we are working as fast as we can to get past this issue and get on a more sustainable path. And so I appreciate you giving us the time. I really appreciate the feedback. I appreciate the questions. We're going to do this, and we're going to do it right, and we're going to do it together. So with that, I will not hold you anymore. And again, if you have questions, concerns, please reach out to us. All right, have a great day.